Despite having debuted over a decade ago, the PlayStation 4 still manages to hold its own in the gaming industry, especially in the horror genre. From modern masterpieces to timeless classics, the scariest games on PS4 allow players to experience the scare of their lives. The PS5 shortage is finally easing, meaning more users will be able to get their hands on the latest hardware, but the PlayStation 4's scariest games prove its predecessor is still relevant, so come and discover the best PS4 horror games. 2023's Dead Space is a stunning remake of a modern survival horror classic. The Ishimura is even creepier than you'll remember it being in 2008 as you step back into the space boots of Isaac Clarke. Embarking on a mission with his crew to investigate the strange goings-on in a seemingly abandoned spaceship, things quickly go south in this monster-ridden deep space maze. Constantly pursued by horrific creatures known as necromorphs, the Dead Space remake has been praised for its stellar visuals, sound design, and its notorious permadeath impossible mode. Even if you've never played the original, Dead Space is definitely the best horror games in recent years and well worth your time. Just don't aim for the head. However, the first-person experience Visage ultimately tops the list. The game's 4 chapters each portray different, yet equally distressing narratives that heavily focus on mental health, and the challenging puzzles that are found therein make for engaging gameplay that doesn't take away too much from the horror of the title. For better or worse, most of Visage's success stems from its clear PT inspiration. Although the short demo unfortunately never made it past its early stages, it changed the horror scene forever with its chilling, liminal atmosphere and revolutionary gameplay, which took direct advantage of player psychology. Visage aims to recreate the magic of PT, and although it isn't quite the same, it largely succeeds in generating those same primal fight or flight reactions alongside a constant, underlying sense of unease. Outlast 2 is a first-person survival horror game that follows the story of Blake Langerman, a journalist investigating the murder of a pregnant woman in the Arizona desert. As Blake uncovers the dark secrets of the area, he must navigate through a series of terrifying encounters with cultists and supernatural forces. With its intense atmosphere, gripping narrative, and heart-pounding gameplay, Outlast 2 is a must-play for horror fans. Wrongdus is an upcoming survival horror game that puts players in the role of a character seeking revenge against a group of individuals who wronged them. Set in a dark and atmospheric world, the game offers a mix of stealth, exploration, and intense combat encounters. With its emphasis on player choice and consequence, Wrongdus promises to deliver a thrilling and immersive horror experience. 11 years after the Xbox 360 original, PlayStation players finally get to experience what Alan Wake is all about. With better visuals and frame rates, the story of Alan Wake has a light shone on it once more. Its gameplay is probably going to feel a little dated at this point, but it's a compelling experience that'll set you up nicely for its PS5 sequel. There's something deeply wrong with Little Nightmare 2, in a good way. The sequel really doubles down on the original creepy children's story world but somehow ups the unpleasantness to impressive levels. The weirdness just creeps under your skin as you explore. From creepy juddering mannequins, to faceless, lost people, faces seemingly worn away by the TV static they'll die to stare at, there's little in this game that won't unnerve you, or leave you feeling uncomfortable thinking about it. It can be frustrating at times, the controls never really live up to the demands, and there are a few trial and error encounters to blunder through, but stick with it and you'll experience probably one of the most traumatizing games on this list. Martha is Dead is a psychological thriller set in Tuscany, Italy, during World War II. The game follows the story of a young woman named Julia, who must unravel the mystery surrounding her twin sister Martha's death. With its haunting atmosphere, deep narrative, and stunning visuals, Martha is Dead offers a unique and immersive horror experience that explores themes of grief, loss, and identity. The Callisto Protocol is a survival horror game set in the year 2320 on Jupiter's moon, Callisto. Players must survive against horrifying creatures and unravel the mysteries of the prison colony they find themselves in. With its dark and atmospheric setting, intense gameplay, and stunning graphics, the Callisto Protocol promises to deliver a truly terrifying and immersive horror experience. Some of the finest of feathers in Naughty Dog's well-groomed plume, The Last of Us Remastered is not just an improved version of one of PlayStation's greatest ever games, it's arguably one of the most impressive releases of all time. An all-rounder that marries tense gameplay with compelling characterization and sublime presentation, Joel and Ellie's cross-country escapade is as somber as it is heartwarming. From Software's Dark Souls games, of which this is a very obvious descendant, don't play like horror standards. They're action RPGs, built around stat micromanagement and skillful play, and yet they feel scarier than most games that build themselves around fear, stress, dread, and jumps come as frequently as loot and leveling. Bloodborne is the best of the lot, a sprawling, mysterious tale of eldritch horror set in a twisted nightmare vision of Victorian Europe. Traveling down cobblestone streets amidst dark spires, you'll hear hushed conversations behind firmly locked doors, wondering who you are and what the hunt you seem to be on could be. It's gaming's best Lovecraftian horror. You'll be driven to discover its secrets as much as you are to master its vicious combat systems. DeathGround is a multiplayer survival horror game that pits players against a variety of deadly dinosaurs in a mysterious research facility. Players must work together to survive against the odds and uncover the secrets of the facility. With its intense gameplay, immersive atmosphere, and unique setting, DeathGround offers a thrilling and challenging horror experience for players. Following a string of disappointing releases, Capcom got its beloved horror franchise back on track with Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. Set inside the dreadful house of the Baker family, Ethan Winters, that's you, must fight for his life and escape his captors. It marks a return to true survival horror and ups the tension with a first-person perspective. If you want to make things even more claustrophobic, you can strap on a PSVR headset and play the entire thing in VR. Resi 7 drags the series back to its roots and sets the mood for what would come next. Being the most recent entry in the Amnesia franchise, Amnesia, The Bunker is much different than its predecessors, but it by no means lacks in the scares department. Set in the labyrinthine passages of a World War I bunker, the latest game in the Amnesia series unleashes ancient horrors on a rapidly modernizing world. After being knocked unconscious by an artillery shell, protagonist Henri wakes up in a completely sealed bunker, where the only other living human is quickly abducted by a mysterious creature known only as the Beast. As he searches for generator fuel to keep the lights on, Henri uncovers bits and pieces of an age-old mystery. Resources are strictly limited, and every journey into the bunker is fraught with unique peril, even more than previous games in the series thanks to its procedurally generated nature. What it lacks in the storytelling strengths of previous games in the series, Amnesia, The Bunker makes up for in creepy atmosphere and tense gameplay. While Morgan U's trek across a space station doesn't offer the breathless horror Dead Space does, especially the Mooncrash DLC showed off Prey's potential for horror. A fairly straightforward alien shooter can become much more unsettling when the goal changes from you defending yourself to saving others, and the element of randomization in Mooncrash does a lot in keeping you on your toes. But basic Prey 2 has a certain spookiness to it. Apart from being a brilliant game with many secret nooks and crannies to discover, Prey, just like other Arcane games, gives you a certain freedom of approach. Many stories you come across in its environment tell of horrifying accidents, people trying to flee, or alien encounters. If you want a bit more action but love good environmental storytelling, this is another game you shouldn't sleep on. Supermassive Games made a real name for itself with Until Dawn. This narrative adventure game effectively lets you partake in a schlocky teen horror movie, where your choices will have potentially grisly effects on the ensemble cast. With atmosphere to spare, lovably corny performances, and a highly replayable adventure full of outcomes to discover, it's no wonder this game is such a cult hit. Observer System Redux is a cyberpunk horror game that puts players in the role of a neural detective known as an observer. Set in a dystopian future, the game follows the detective as they hack into the minds of suspects to solve crimes. With its haunting atmosphere, immersive narrative, and stunning visuals, Observer System Redux offers a unique and chilling gaming experience. Inscryption is a blend of roguelike gameplay and psychological horror that challenges players to survive a twisted card game. As players progress, they uncover dark secrets and face off against increasingly challenging opponents. With its unique blend of gameplay mechanics and unsettling atmosphere, Inscryption is a must-play for fans of horror and card games alike. Maid of Sker is a first-person survival horror game inspired by Welsh folklore. Set in a remote hotel, the game follows a musician as they uncover the hotel's dark secrets and evade malevolent entities. With its tense atmosphere, immersive story, and strategic gameplay, Maid of Sker delivers a thrilling and chilling experience for horror fans. Resident Evil 2 is the quintessential remake. Understanding what made the PS1 classic so unforgettable back in 1998, it faithfully recreates that survival horror experience and takes it to new heights 2 decades later. The Raccoon Police Department has never looked better, but the undead zombies it houses are more frightening than ever. Mr. X takes on a new lease of life as he patrols Raccoon City, but the sort of weaponry at your disposal might just be enough to match him. It may leave some features and enemies by the wayside, but Resident Evil 2 successfully brings back that classic, memorable experience, turning it into an instant classic on PS4. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre game is a survival horror game based on the iconic horror film franchise. Players must navigate a dangerous environment while avoiding the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface and other hazards. With its intense gameplay and faithful adaptation of the film's atmosphere, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game is a must-play for fans of the franchise and horror games in general. The Dark Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me is an interactive horror game that puts players in control of the story. As they make choices, they will shape the outcome of the game and determine the fate of the characters. With its branching narrative, immersive storytelling, and cinematic presentation, The Dark Pictures Anthology, The Devil in Me offers a unique and engaging horror experience. Layers of Fear is a trip into the psyche of a mysterious painter whose only goal is to create his magnum opus, but the game is far from a lighthearted art session. Rather, players will see the protagonist's own harrowing backstory unfold before their very eyes, and it will often be difficult to tell reality apart from delusion in this psychological horror experience. The game's biggest strength is its atmosphere, as dim lighting, unsettling music, and psychedelic visuals infiltrate the setting at an increasing rate. By the end, players will need to brave their way through a series of disturbing, mind-melting scenes that might make them question their own sanity, making Layers of Fear one of the scariest PS4 games. Bigger and better than its predecessor, The Evil Within 2 opts for more open environments to set its horror scares in as opposed to the dark, tight corridors of the original. This results in a much better experience with more player freedom, questions, and options. It's sort of a hidden gem at this point. Horror aficionados owe it to themselves to check out The Evil Within 2. Alone in the Dark is a survival horror game that follows the story of Edward Carnby, a paranormal investigator, as he explores a haunted mansion in search of answers. The game is known for its eerie atmosphere, challenging puzzles, and innovative gameplay mechanics, such as the ability to interact with objects in the environment. With its tense gameplay and compelling story, Alone in the Dark is a must-play for fans of the horror genre. An asymmetrical horror game with a massive roster of monsters and celebrity cameos, Dead by Daylight is a great spooky game to have on your console, especially around Halloween, as there's usually a special event or new character drop to celebrate the scariest time of the year. For those not familiar, Dead by Daylight pits a team of survivors versus a killer. The arenas can be small or sprawling, but the goal is survivors have to repair generators to power up an exit gate, whilst the killer has to stop them. There are a lot of bizarre powers, helpful passives or skills, and the ability to mix and match to get your own unique build once you put a good bit of time into the game. Great on your own and better with friends. Dead by Daylight is definitely worth trying. It may not look quite as good as its PS5 counterpart, but Resident Evil Village is still a sublime experience on PS4. The follow-up to Resident Evil 7, Biohazard, sees Ethan Winters return, having been kidnapped to a remote European village, once again told from the first-person perspective. Werewolves are the main enemy he faces this time, but the game still gets creepy, bloody, and gooey when it wants to. This is Capcom horror at its absolute peak, representing one of the best original Resident Evil entries since the PS2's Resident Evil 4. Madison is a psychological horror game that puts players in the role of a detective investigating a series of gruesome murders in a small town. As the detective delves deeper into the case, they uncover dark secrets and face terrifying supernatural threats. The game features a gripping story, tense atmosphere, and challenging puzzles, making it a thrilling experience for fans of horror games. Supermassive Games is best known for revolutionizing the choice-based horror genre, and the Quarry certainly doesn't disappoint on this account. Inspired by slasher classics like Friday the 13th, it follows a group of counselors who find themselves stranded at a summer camp for a night. Their wholesome bonding experience quickly turns into a pandemonium of violence, dark family secrets, and even lycanthropy. Players will need to use their own best judgment to make it through the night, and the fate of the counselors is entirely in their control. The Quarry has 186 endings, depending on who lives, who dies, and who's infected. Something as small as the wrong dialogue option can lead to a gruesome, brutal death, making the Quarry a perpetually tense and terrifying experience. ILL is a horror game that puts players in the shoes of a patient in a mysterious hospital filled with supernatural beings. As players explore the hospital, they must uncover its dark secrets and find a way to escape. The game features a haunting atmosphere, challenging puzzles, and multiple endings based on the player's choices, making it a compelling experience for fans of horror games. Blair Witch is a psychological horror game inspired by the iconic film of the same name. Players take on the role of a police officer searching for a missing boy in the Black Hills forest. As the officer navigates the forest, they must contend with supernatural forces and their own inner demons. The game features a tense atmosphere, clever puzzles, and a gripping story that pays homage to the original film, making it a must-play for fans of the horror genre. So, did you like the games I recommended? So leave your like, subscribe to the channel to follow me, and activate the bell because I post a lot of videos on this channel and you can't miss it. Thank you very much for following me this far, and until next time, bye.